Hi, I'm Rachael.
And I'm Amy.
And this is Wisen Up. Today, our episode is going to be one of 3 on
addiction.
What happens when you are consumed by being consumed? We like to start off every podcast with a quote. I've got a quote, Amy's got a quote for later. And this is a really important topic to discuss because it affects so many households in the United States and the world. And when we're talking about addiction, we're not only talking and focusing on alcoholism, although that is the most prevalent and socially acceptable form of addiction.
For sure.
We're going to be covering, drugs, whether it's drugs, alcohol, porn, sex addiction, gambling addiction, food addictions. So,
phone addictions,
our children and their addictions. That's another podcast. So today I want to start off this podcast with a quote that I came up with a long time ago. And it says, "The 7 deadly sins are only deadly because they're done in excess." I'm not sure if somebody else has coined that yet, and if you have, my apologies. But I was sitting in a classroom once, and I thought to myself, it's okay to have pride, right? It's okay to be proud of your job. You should be proud of your work ethic, proud of your children, and a proud parent, proud of your heritage. It's when pride then stops being humble and starts being boastful, where it can be intrusive to other people. And the same thing with envy. It's okay to have envy over what somebody has. Sometimes that's a great motivator for other people. I always used to say, if somebody has something that you aspire to and you're envious of it, then get motivated to be that thing.
For sure.
But it's when it becomes obsessive and toxic and stalking that envy, when you want something so badly that you're going to do anything that it takes to covet it, where it becomes excessive. Same thing with gluttony. We are an extraordinarily gluttonous society, especially in the United States. And it's okay to eat. We all gotta eat. But when you consume to the point of excess, where it's wasteful, is where it becomes that deadly sin you talk about. And gluttony doesn't necessarily only mean food. It means it can be consuming anything that's materialistic, cars, money, power, the phone, anything like that, right?
I'm going to start out with my quote. My quote is, "There are only 2 sins. The first is to interfere with the growth of another human being, and the second is to interfere with one's own personal growth." So it's taking those 7 things, and you can call them sin, you can call them whatever you want to call them, but what it is it's whether or not you are affecting others or affecting yourself in a negative way is a detriment to them and or to yourself. So with that being said, that quote was from the Daily Reflections of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have definitely brushed elbows with Alcoholics Anonymous. My mom was in Al-Anon when I was a kid. And so I do have some of that verbiage and some of that stuff that's been in my life throughout my life. So I'm not going to advocate either or. I don't know if that's for everyone, but I personally think that some kind of spiritual program is very important if you do find that you relate to any of this and this is something that you want to go to.
Absolutely. And I'm also coming from a perspective, I'm an AA baby. I grew up in those smoke-filled rooms in the 80s in San Francisco. My dad was, he was an alcoholic, and he got sober when I was about 3 years old. And I can't even tell you how many stories that I've heard. And it's because of those rooms and knowing that those are safe places to go that I never really truly fell into a deep addiction myself. I always had a support group, and I knew that there was a place to go. So if you do find yourself in a situation like Amy said, where this is you, know that there is a lot of support out there for you, and not to be afraid to just reach out.
Absolutely, and that's for any addiction you have. So if you're not an alcoholic, they have Al-Anon for co-dependency. They have Overeaters Anonymous. I mean, if you need a support system and you're really struggling to break free, they're out there. So just, we just want to put that out there. We're not specialists, but we know that there are things out there that you can reach out to, and groups that you can reach out to that can give you some steps to work through the stuff that you're going through.
So what happens when you're consumed by being consumed? Essentially, what does that mean? It means that you've come to a place where your addiction and or the person that you're with is hurting the people around you, including yourself. So the American Society of Addiction Medicine defines addiction as a treatable, chronic, medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and an individual's life experiences. So essentially, addiction means that you are consuming something to the point where it consumes you. This means that to you, the reward is greater than the risk. Mm-hmm. And I promise you that if you're an addict, your behavior is damaging to other people, sometimes even more than it's damaging to yourself. Because when your behavior is hurtful to other people, they have to love you through the pain that you're causing them, even when they don't even know that they're causing you the amount of pain that they are, right? So it doesn't matter, again, whether it's drugs, alcohol, gambling, even if you walk away from that person, you still worry about them. You can still be a codependent.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk a lot about codependency, what that looks like. I didn't know I was a codependent, nor did I even know I grew up in a family where I had a parent that was a codependent, because my father didn't drink when I was growing up. He was sober and he was active in a program, right? But what he created in the early years of his marriage is what I saw as a codependent, and ended up creating that for myself and not even knowing it. So I just want to preface this by saying that if you are in a situation where you're in a relationship with somebody that is taking you to a place where you feel like you're going crazy, and you need them to stop, I promise you there's no amount of yelling or begging or pleading or crying or bargaining or negotiating
For sure.
that you can do to get them to stop their behavior. And the reality is if they do decide to stop their behavior because of you, it's likely not going to last, and I promise you they will be resentful. So
Well, and if they do, they have to do it for themselves.
you got to do it for yourself.
For sure. No one,
we know that.
yeah, because that's one of the things that I've learned with, like, anytime I've, like, come in contact with someone who's making a change, if they're not doing it for themselves, it feels like a punishment.
Yeah.
You know? And
Absolutely.
And they feel like they're being punished for their behavior
Uh-huh.
because they don't think it's a problem.
Right.
You know? Even if it's treating somebody poorly, and it's not even about what we're talking about. If you're checking them on that, and they don't, and now they have to check their behavior, they're going to resent you for checking them on their behavior. So it's, I mean, you know, personal accountability when it comes to this kind of stuff is really challenging for the person that's being asked to change.
And we know in this situation that we're likely not talking to people that are the active addict.
Right.
They're not going to want to hear what we have to say. So
Right, because though we have brushed up against addiction on our own in our own lives, especially as younger women, our biggest thing that we've had to talk about and work through and grow through and heal through is the codependency, growing up in homes where we saw codependency firsthand, and then taking that on in our own relationships and in our own world.
And we're going to talk about how to break that and what that looks like for both parties, and what it looks like when you're going through that process, how to get yourself back. And our third podcast on addiction is going to be what happens when you do get sober. So Amy's going to talk about how do you know that you're possibly an addict or with somebody that is, and how you can possibly get out of a situation like that if you're in it.
For sure. So this first part of the series, we're definitely going to address what it is to be an addict, or like, are you an addict? Are you with an addict, or are you both? And so when we talk about practical application and the healing process, we will go more into that into the series, but we really want to get into identifying who you are. Are you the addict? Are you the codependent? And if you are one of those things, having that conversation with yourself so that you can start moving into the next phases that we're going to go into.
So how do you know? How do you know?
Well, any behavior that you're doing, if it's taking away from the quality of your life, most likely that's an addiction. So we can talk about, like, just touch on the fact, like, if you are on your phone a lot.
Yeah.
And you're realizing that there's a lot of things that you could be doing other than being on your phone. And then you still keep going on your phone, or you tell yourself, I'm not going to go on my phone, and then you pick it up to check a phone call or something, or a message, and the next thing you know, you've been on your phone for 3 hours.
And why would it be a risk to anybody for you to be on your phone, right? How does that affect anybody? Why does it upset anybody? From a parental point of view, I know that it's really, really upsetting to a lot of us parents who see our children completely addicted to these machines.
Or how about the parents where the kids are like, mommy, I'm hungry, it's dinner time.
Right, and they're just, flipping through YouTube because that's what they do for 2 hours. So there's the disconnect, the lack of communication from the parent to the child. It could be anything like that.
So, and I'm just saying that is just a really light addiction that we can talk about, but things can go into a deep, dark place very easily. And a lot of times, when you've crossed over into a space of addiction, when you've made a decision, like you've recognized that something's happening there that's unhealthy, and you've made the decision to address it, and then you keep doing the behavior anyways. So, and you can kind of tell that you've crossed over into the space of addiction because even after you've made that decision in your mind, you continue to go through with that behavior.
And justify why you do it.
Right. And then if someone confronts you about it, a lot of the time you feel defensive.
Absolutely.
The addict always feels defensive. And the reason why they feel defensive is because you're asking them to take accountability for something that they want to do.
It's not your problem. It's not their problem. It's your problem.
Right.
Oh, they're happy. They're golden.
So, and then if you go into like an alcoholic and you say, hey, your drinking's really affecting me, but it's not affecting them in any kind of a way. And then they
they don't know it. They don't know it yet.
Right.
It's affecting them.
Right, exactly.
We're not there yet.
Well, there's different levels too. Yeah. I was just discussing with Rachael earlier that in an AA meeting, there's this gentleman who he's a CEO of a company, and he has a beautiful home, and everything in his life is functioning the way that he wants to, but his marriage is really unhappy. And he hasn't gotten to the point where he's lost his wife or he's lost his kids, so he doesn't understand why it's a problem. He's doing all the things, but that's the bargaining stage. That's I might be an alcoholic or I might have a problem, but I'm doing all these things.
Look how good it is. I'm a doctor, I'm an attorney, I'm well-to-do, and I have lots of friends, and life is good, but the person that you go and lay next to bed every night with is miserable, and you have no idea how they feel, and are you paying attention?
Can that person be held accountable, whether that's you or whether that's the person that's in your life that's affecting people with their behavior? And that's usually the most difficult part with addiction is the recognizing it and then being accountable in that space. So if you're dealing with somebody who has a serious addiction problem, trust and believe they know that they have something going on.
Even if they tell you that they don't.
Right.
I was with someone who for years said, I'm not an alcoholic. Well, what are you talking about? Alcoholics drink every day, all day. Oh boy. Really? Like, you hear them say the things, and then you think to yourself, do they not hear themselves when they say?
It's not just the addiction that's the problem. It's the behavior that comes along with it, the lying and the distrust and the sowing seeds of like always wondering what's going to happen next and how it's going to be, and and that place of anxiety, and
that's part of the codependency that we will definitely dive into. So I guess
for sure, yeah.
Are you an addict?
Right. Are you an addict?
Are you with an addict?
Are you with an addict?
Or are you both?
For sure.
You have to ask yourself that question. So let's just say you're not the addict. Because a lot of the times people who are addicts are really not, they either don't see themselves as addicts, or they do and they just really aren't ready to deal with that yet. They're not in a place where they're able to be vulnerable enough to take a good look in the mirror and see who they really are and get down to the reasons why they are that way.
Absolutely.
So the other piece of it is, are you in a relationship with somebody that is an addict alcoholic? And if so, two things. Number one, if it doesn't bother you or your life, this isn't for you.
For sure.
If it's socially culturally acceptable to drink, and you're doing it right along with them, or recreational drugs on the weekends, and you guys that's your life and it doesn't bother you, are you probably addicts? Yeah. If it doesn't bother you, who cares then, right?
Right, exactly.
It doesn't really
because
matter.
Especially if you're with somebody and that's just your level and what you guys are doing, and you can get on a level together, and you're happy, and everywhere you go you have drinks and shots and you're good together. And sometimes on the weekend you're snorkeling lines of coke. That's you. Do you. And if you're happy and that's what you're doing, that's great. And that's what we want to make sure. There's no judgment here. This is about, where are you in this space where do you need help? Or do you need to recognize that there's a problem?
So how do you recognize if you're in a relationship with somebody who is an addict? Sometimes when it's not obvious. Now, most people that are in a relationship with somebody who are an addict alcoholic, they know that they're in that relationship with that person.
For sure.
But you may not know it right off the bat. Or what happens when you meet somebody and they're sober and they're off drugs and alcohol and they don't drink, and then all of a sudden they relapse when they're with you, and you've never seen that side of them before. And you're already in it. You already love them. You are already head over heels. You don't want to lose that person, but months and months into the relationship, they fall off the wagon, or even 2 years later, let's say that you've gotten married, you've had your first kid, a lot of stress, something happens and boom. So that all of a sudden that experience becomes a very, very new person that you're dealing with.
Well, and you know what? I'm going to add to that and say, and how about if you're with an addict and they've been sober, like with me and my husband? He was sober for a long time, and we wanted to touch on this, which is being a dry drunk. Because addicts, if you're dealing with an unhealed addict, you're going to get a lot of that addiction behavior, even though they're not using.
Talk about what it's like to get to the other side of addiction, what that looks like for both parties involved and for families involved, and if it's even something that you'd even want to stick around for. So you've now asked yourself, are you the addict? Are you with an addict? Or are you both? And a lot of times, like we said, if you're both and you're okay with it, this isn't for you. So my question then, Amy, is what do you do when you're in a relationship with somebody that has an addiction to something and you've brought it to their attention over and over and over, because you've begged, you've pleaded, you've cried. They know that it's a serious issue in your relationship. It is ruining your life with this person. It could be ruining their work life. They could be not waking up, losing their job, spending all afternoon scrolling through YouTube or social media. What do you do when the other person cannot understand where you're coming from, and there's no amount of begging or pleading or crying or bargaining or negotiating that you can do to get them to change who they are and change their mind?
Okay, so with me, everything comes back to self. So at this point, you're in a relationship with someone that you've identified that there's a problem with whatever it is that they're doing, and that it feels like abuse for you.
Absolutely.
And abuse sometimes gets kind of misconstrued like it's a dirty, bad word. Like, oh, well, just because they're on their phone so much doesn't mean they're abusing me. Or just because we have separate bank accounts and I don't want it to be that way doesn't mean they're abusing me. But if you're not happy and you're uncomfortable and you've addressed this and you're not able to resolve that, that comes back to you. That means that if you go to that person and they can't be held accountable, at what point are you going to take accountability that you're choosing to be in a situation that you're unhappy, and you've identified the things that are making you unhappy? You've also identified that this person does not want to take responsibility.
They don't want to change.
Right. They're not willing to go back to themselves and say, you know what? I'm doing these things and I'm willing to fix them so we can do it. Now, if they're willing to work with you, that's a whole other conversation. But if you're in a situation where that person is refusing to be accountable for the things that they're doing and not willing to take the steps to change that, you have to go back to yourself and go, okay,
how is it serving you?
Yes, how is it serving you? So is this a deal breaker for you? Are you done? Are you over? Because if you're still in it, then maybe you're not done. And maybe it's not a deal breaker for you.
And maybe what is it about you that needs to be able to control the narrative?
Right, and then that goes into codependency.
Absolutely.
But a lot of that comes from, whether it's alcoholism, addiction, codependency, whatever it is, that all comes from something unhealed within yourself. And so if you're with someone that you can work with and you guys can work together, heal together, that's great. But a lot of times you have to identify the fact that you're in a situation that you've chosen for yourself, and now you have to make new choices if you want the situation to change. And if that means that you have to step away, even if it's not permanent, Sometimes you just need to take a step back and evaluate, is this worth it for me? Is there a payoff for me?
There's got to be a payoff to stay, some way, somehow.
Right.
And that payoff could be really, really toxic.
Right, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure, especially for the codependent.
Especially for the codependent. If you're choosing to stay in a relationship with somebody that is breaking your heart over and over and over and over again, why are you staying? What about that is reminiscent of your youth? What about the little child in you that didn't get enough attention, or didn't get enough love, or didn't get what they needed from their environment that is okay with that type of abuse?
Right.
So if you're going to be somebody that's going to choose to stay in a relationship with somebody that's going to continue to hurt you repeatedly over and over again, and not only hurt you, but throw out the apologies and a little tinkle of, remorse here and there, and then just flip it right around on you. It's your fault. It's your problem. You're the reason I do drugs. You're the reason that I drink. You're the person stressing me out, instead of, I have a really big problem.
Well, the thing that is your fault is that you're still there. And you're still doing it even though you've identified it. So anytime I talk about these things, I'm always going to come back to self, and I'm never going to put on the kitten gloves about this. You are choosing it, and the point you need to get to is why. Why are you doing that to yourself? Why are you staying for that? Why are you allowing your life to be that way?
I know why I did.
Right, and I know why I did too.
And it's interesting because I thought about the pieces that were fulfilling to me, and it's like I didn't want any of it, but I loved this person so immensely, so deeply, so powerfully, that I knew if we could get past this one huge, huge hurdle, that we would be unstoppable. That we would be the power couple. We would conquer the world. We'd have this magical love. And it's not a situation of being in love with the potential. I was genuinely, and still am genuinely, in love with who they are as a person. The fact that they make me laugh, that they're brilliant, that they're innovative, I'm extremely attracted to them, There are reasons other than self-serving that I would want to stay in that relationship. And eventually I did walk away, and we did walk away from each other, and then it got real bad for them. And it took them a long time to kind of come out of that.
But that gave you a chance to heal.
Absolutely.
And get strong.
Absolutely. And that was the hardest thing I'd ever done, almost the hardest thing I'd ever done in my entire
gosh,
life.
I've never seen you go through anything like that. I know, I watched your whole soul rip out.
Yeah.
And you literally had to take your soul and look at it and be like, what am I made of here? And be able to patch that all back up and go, this is what I'm made of.
Still I rise.
Oh, that's right.
I put a tattoo all the way up my spine. Still I rise.
And I copied her for 2025, and I put it on my arm because still I rise. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you go through, it comes back to self. You have to be willing to pull yourself out of that hell that you're in.
Absolutely.
And remind yourself that you're still worth living for. Yes, we're both coming from the same place. Absolutely. And that's where that all comes from, and we accept that for ourselves, is that we want this love and we want these things, and we want it so desperately that we're willing to stay and go through these things, and we feel unworthy a lot of the times, and that's why we accept it.
Not to mention if you are with an alcoholic addict, they're going to make you feel unworthy. They're going to call you crazy and ludicrous and insane.
And deflect.
And tell you that all you do is complain. Damn right you're probably complaining if you are unhappy and want things to change. So it just ends up snowballing into this toxic situation.
It's a cycle for
never, ever, ever ends. And it's this one beating on this one, complaining that they're beating on this one, and it just goes back and forth.
For sure.
And when you're at that place, the reality is you have to walk away from it. You're not going to get through to the other side when you're literally beating each other up. Like we talked about earlier. You're either going to get sober or you're going to die.
Right.
And
that's the way the relationship is. You're either gonna fix it or your relationship's over. And you have to decide what's worth it for you. Do you care about your inner healing? Do you care about having a life that feels good and feels worth living?
And your children. If you have children with this person, are they safe? Are they safe? Are they
Well, if they're not
healthy?
safe for you, they're not safe for your kids.
Absolutely.
Even if, because I've heard so many people go, oh, he's such a good dad. He's such a good dad. And I'm like, bro, no, he's not. Because he's not available for their mother. Because he's not available for the house when he's doing those things. Because he goes to work and he shows up part of the time and laughs and plays. Doesn't mean those other things aren't still there. The neglect and the emotional inability to show
make
up.
you a quality human being.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And you know what? That kills me too, because a lot of people think because they're able to go to work or they're able to do the things that are expected of us.
That's the bare minimum. You should go to work as a grown adult.
Oh, well, I did these things, so now I'm okay. But if you're not okay with it, then it's not okay.
It's not okay.
Then it's not okay. And you also have to look at that like we're talking about, are you the addict? Is that okay for you? Is it okay for you that you just go to work and then come home and have cocktails, or you come home and have a couple of shots while you're making dinner?
I think that was something that for my partner was a huge eye-opener, was it's easy to get drunk. Go home every day and do that after work. It's easy. It's easy to neglect all the other things that I should be putting effort into because this is easy and I can escape, right? But when they came to a place where they recognized there's no growth in that space, you go nowhere doing the same thing every night, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, and you're still getting the same results.
Now, I told my husband, I was like, I literally feel like I'm in Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
You know, if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day, he wakes up every day in the same freaking day. And the only way this movie actually it changes is when he changes the way he addresses that day from a heart perspective. So he tries to change other things, but when he gets in his heart and starts to change his heart is when the Groundhog Day stops. And so for me, when I was doing this with my husband, where we're stuck in these patterns and we're having these same stupid conversations over and over and over, I'm like, oh my God, I want to freaking kill this guy. And trust me, I wanted to kill him. And I'm not gonna, and I might indict myself here, but I'm not gonna say I've never thrown anything or freaked out, because I'm just like, I'm gonna kill it, because he doesn't know when it's time to shut up.
I know why my mom did what she did to my dad. I didn't fully understand the amount of gross anger and rage that you can feel when you are consistently hurt by someone else who looks at you dead in the face and says, I love you. I love you, but I don't care enough about you to heal this part of myself so that we can be loving together.
Right, so I can show up for you. My first marriage, my husband died at 34 years old of a drug addiction and alcohol. And that's how he was. He was like, I'm here, I'm right here. But before he died, he told me that he went through so much pain that he was never going to heal from those things. Yeah. And I knew at that point.
He told you.
He knew. And when he died, I knew he was going to die. Because he had decided.
Yeah. He
decided that he was never going to do the healing that it would take to become the man that he could be to show up for me and our children.
So also what I'm going to say about that, I believe wholeheartedly that everybody has the ability to get clean and sober and to change their life. With that said, I'm going to go out and may not want to hear it, but some people are a lost cause.
You always call it a foregone conclusion.
I call it a foregone conclusion.
My husband calls it, they're done cooking.
They're done cooking.
And some people just are. And it's that way with just people in general. Like my mom, I don't really have a great relationship with my mom. And the reason why is because she's done cooking. And what that means is that they're never going to grow past the space that they're in. So anytime you confront them about an issue, they're not going to grow past that with you. And what's really weird is they'll learn how to appease you in that moment so that you'll stop the conversation but keep them around.
And there's a lot of dangling transparent carrots.
Oh, and yes, absolutely.
Lots of those.
Yes, many. And that's for the codependent. That's what we live for.
Yeah.
Is those transparent dangling carrots. That moment when they give us the love that we want. Those are the bits that we're holding on to.
Absolutely.
So that we could, because
we can justify why you stay.
Right, because you're always trying to get that person back. But and what's weird is I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they know that. Sometimes I feel like they know that they did that to you, that they were just a big banana in the tailpipe. And then sometimes they don't. You know what I mean? Like with my first marriage, there was never a banana. He knew who he was and what he was, and he tried to tell me. But I thought I could love us both enough for the both of us. Like, I thought that my love was gonna heal us all. You know what I'm saying? And all it did was break me more.
Right.
Because I expected him to show up and be somebody different than he was never gonna be, and he never promised me he was gonna be.
And if somebody tells you they're done cooking or they're a foregone conclusion, they're telling you, I'm never gonna change. At least not anytime soon. And you choose to stay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
there isn't anything much more to do with it, right?
Right. I mean, and we've talked about this for years now. I came up with this saying when we were younger, that if you listen long enough, people will tell you about themselves.
Listen to someone when they tell you about
themselves. So if you're out there in this crazy dating world right now, and someone's telling you how they are, listen to them.
If it's a red flag, don't swim through, the waving, wacky, inflatable arm red flag man.
Right, like, oh, excuse me, red flag, I'm trying to find the person inside all these red flags. No, sometimes you just need to be like, you know what, maybe they are a good person, but that's, these things are like, no. When you first meet somebody, you should find that out about them. Because even if they're clean and sober and they're not doing those things anymore, it doesn't mean that they've healed all the things.
It also doesn't mean that the likelihood of them relapsing isn't really, really high.
Right.
So even recognizing if you do meet somebody and they're sober and you're not working a program and they are, you guys get into a relationship together, there's a high chance that they're going to fall off that wagon and they're going to, still work on beating the monkey off their back. And are you willing to go down that road with them?
Right. And then one of the things Rachael talks about is, how they affect you and how, like, what they do, it, like, really breaks you down and destroys you. But a lot of the things that I struggled with was what they were doing to themselves really affected me because I wanted to see them be their best. And that's the hardest part about some of us is that we're attracted to these broken people, these people that are, because we're broken. You know what I'm saying? Like, remember what I told you when I first got with Matt? You're like, it was something like, why did you love him? Or what was it about him? It was like, and I said something along the lines of, I saw the pain in him that I felt inside myself.
No, I remember it distinctly. You said, I saw the pain in his eyes. I saw the same pain in his eyes that I felt in my heart.
And that's the kind of stuff that we do when we aren't healed, when we're untreated, is that we go find someone else who isn't healed and hasn't treated the things that have happened to them. And then we attract that. Mm-hmm. And then we create these, really toxic, unhealthy relationships because, he came from addiction home. I came from an addiction home, selfish parents in one space or another, And so with that being said, I take responsibility that I went into that knowing full well what he was, but I had so much brokenness inside myself, I didn't even realize what I was getting myself into.
Yeah. You were young.
I was very young.
A lot of people go into these relationships young and they don't know themselves, let alone the other person. And that's the other piece of it. If you don't know who you are, how are you really giving your authentic self to anybody else? It's the same as trusting yourself. If you can't trust yourself, how are you going to expect anybody else to trust you either? So that's part of what it's like being with an addict, being on the other end of it, and the choices on why you might stay. So by now you've probably figured out whether or not you're an addict, you're with an addict, or you're both. Our next podcast is going to dive very deeply into codependency, and then it's going to talk about how to heal from that if you are suffering from codependency in your relationship.
And we will help put some tools in your toolbox by the end of that podcast. And then we also just want to say, if you are looking for help, all areas have a local AA meeting. You can Google it. There's also other programs that are out there with the same kind of 12-step programs or anything like that. So please feel free to look for that. And if you're in a really dangerous situation, please reach out to the authorities, or you can also Google in your area whether or not there's some kind of special place that will help you relieve your situation, because a lot of times there is. With that being said, Rachael and I are both able to be reached at our emails.
I'm Rachael, Rachael, @wisenup.com.
And I'm Amy at wisenup.com, and that's WHYZEN.com. Oh, and the UP.
Don't forget the UP.
So yeah, that part. And I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. Wisen.com. Okay. So we'll just put that on the bottom of the screen for your information. We'll also put it in the description and you will be able to reach us that way. Please feel free to reach out and ask us any questions that you may have.
Thank you for watching today. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Amy.
And this is Wisen Up.